Thank you, Deepak, for joining us today. It's great to be with you, as always. And just to give you some context for our gathering, over the past few days, we have been sharing with each other our personal as well as our community's evolution, and especially over the past year and a half during the pandemic period, and really listening deeply to what our hearts are calling us to do and releasing what no longer serves us and utilizing the insights we have gained during this period to support the birth of a new humanity, a thriving, synergistic, global superorganism built upon greater cooperation and especially modeled by our own inner ecosystem, nature, and our animal friends like the bees and the cosmic potential, and creating powers within our own imaginal selves to really usher in this new period, this new era. But humanity as a whole has not quite been able to get to the place where we can consider ourselves a successful global superorganism. So in your wonderful book, which I have right here, Metahuman, you shared that the Greek word meta means beyond. So going beyond the limitations constructed by the mind and our cultural and social programming to enter into a new state of awareness, this pure consciousness, which is the field of all possibilities, as you say so often, including tapping into the creative source, where we can come up with innovations and partnerships and new ways to keep ourselves and other precious species alive on planet Earth. So we know that many people today are evolving from humans, Homo sapiens sapien, to metahumans, but we'd love to hear your insights on how to best make the leap from being metahumans to being a fully activated metahumanity, all 7.8 billion of us.
Okay, thank you, Diane. That gives me some insight into what I should say. I'll start with my own personal story very briefly, and I'll preface that by saying that even though I work here in the medical field and with everyone in the Western world, I'm still a traditionalist, and I go back to my own roots. And in my tradition, the first ashram means place to rest. Actually, there's a Hebrew word which is very similar to ashram, ashiram, where you rest. So the first ashram is the first 25 years of life, and it's education. The second ashram is achievement, what we call fame and fortune. That's the second 25 years of life. The third 25 years of life is giving back, slowly start to detach from fame and fortune. And I'm now 74, so by the end of October this year, I'll be 75, ready to enter the fourth and final ashram, or if you're a sports person, you say the fourth and final innings. And I'm really looking forward to the last innings and the final curtain, which we call death. So the fourth ashram is about self-realization. And I'm in the process of that. And, it takes a long time for a fruit to ripen, then one day it's ready to fall. And so where am I personally? I'm supposedly a brand. I'm identified with that, my name, Deepak Chopra. I want to give it up, and it's going to be a while, but I'm ready for it. And what does it mean? It means that your only identity is pure consciousness, which, as you just said, is a field of infinite possibilities, but it's also a field of infinite coherence, correlation, self-organization, self-evolution, self-regulation. It's unpredictable, thank God, because if it was predictable, we'd all be algorithms. So it's imbued with unpredictability and uncertainty. So I'm now totally surrendering to uncertainty. And it is the basis of all creativity, because if things were predictable, then we all be algorithms. And fortunately, at least evolutionary leaders here are not algorithms, although 99.9% of humanity is functioning like an algorithm. And that's what it means to be human today, to be an algorithm, a bundle of conditioned responses and nerves constantly being triggered by people and circumstance into predictable outcomes. So my choice right now is not to be an algorithm and to embrace uncertainty, unpredictability, self-organization, self-regulation, coherence, and emergence. Many social scientists are talking about what they call emergence. Emergence means an old paradigm, old story, old meaning, old context, old relationships, or the quality of old relationships dies completely. And there's a death and there's a resurrection with no recycling of the old meaning, context, etc. It's actually the cycle of our soul, death and resurrection. It's also the cycle of every experience. Is born, dies as soon as it's there. So this experience will be dead in a little while. Of course, it'll live on the internet for those who want to go there and check it out. But, if I asked you what happened to 5 minutes ago, it's gone. If by the time you listen to these words, they don't exist. So everything we are experiencing right now has already happened. Even this now is already happened in time, not in timeless now, but it's happened. So what are emergent scientists saying? They're saying, if you want a new story, a new context, a new meaning, a new modality of relationships, you need the following ingredients. And it's pretty well spelled out. Okay, you need maximum diversity. EL is a group of maximum diversity, but not only maximum diversity of men, women, gender, race, but also maximum diversity of talent, expression, education. But maximum diversity also includes different disciplines. So scientists, philosophers, storytellers, entertainers, educational people in the field of education, younger generation, people who are now my grandkids and their kids. Everybody needs maximum diversity, number one. Number two, complementing each other's strengths. Number three, a shared vision. Number four, total lack of ego. Number five, transparency and open systems. So the scientists that I speak to who are talking about emergence, they're talking about five things right now. And I'm engaging with them because they want to reinvent humanity. And the five things they're talking about right now are convergence of information technologies. We're using information technology, but that's much more than Zoom. AI, artificial intelligence, VR, augmented reality. We have so much technology now. If you bring it together, you can actually upgrade the collective dream and also upgrade the quality of the fictional characters in the collective dream. So one is convergence of information technologies. The second thing that they're looking at is food, because right now the way we produce food is causing climate change and everything else that is a consequence of climate change. There are new technologies, including precision fermentation, the creation of proteins from the microbiome, looking under the earth for new genetic information, but all natural. Okay, so food needs to be reinvented. Right now, human beings eat 5 proteins: fish, fowl, beef, chicken, and they're done. There are trillions of proteins we can create through just the right genetic information in the earth. If you go under the surface of the planet in a rainforest, in 1 teaspoon of soil, you'll find more genetic diversity than the entire surface of the planet. That's the gold mine for the future, resurrecting life, every form of life, to create a new biosphere and reverse climate change. So food is next. Transportation is third, because we don't need fossil fuels. The technology already exists to create automated transportation without fossil fuels. The fourth is creation of new matter, going right down to the basics: atoms, molecules, and force fields. So we don't need to depend on the earth to dig out steel or iron or whatever. These are all being discussed right now. So, and the fifth is energy which comes totally from sources that do not pollute this planet. Those are very interesting innovations that are already happening. What's missing is shared vision and what I spoke about earlier, the emotional connection. We still call this world the universe when it's our extended body. We say, oh, there's the environment. There's no such thing as an environment. We have a personal body, we have a universal body. They're both equally ours. The air is our breath. You put a plant in a vacuum, it dies. You put a mammal in a vacuum, it dies. You put them both together, they live. It's obvious that, there's one biosphere. And this whole idea of separation, me and the world, is ridiculous and based on a false construct. The false construct, even science will recognize, is subject-object split. But yet today's science is based on subject-object split. Today's science is also based on what we call a physicalist ontology. That means the world is made of matter. Nobody has ever identified a substance called matter. What we call matter is a changing perceptual activity in human consciousness, and it's actually a reflection of ourselves. So, we have to get rid of some very false notions. One is subject-object split. The second is the superstition of matter. And the third is that we are embodied. There's no proof that you are an embodied person. What we call the body is a changing perceptual activity. And we know that, if you ask Nisargadatta Maharaj or all these great seers, what happens to you after I die? They say I was never born. So, the fact is the observer is never embodied. It's an illusion. What we call the body is a changing perceptual activity. What we call the mind is a changing mental activity. And they're both expressions of the self. So once we change these very fundamental flaws in our scientific thinking, because science is a product of human consciousness and a very limited product of human consciousness based on magical lies that we call perception. And we know they are magical lies. My perception tells me the earth is flat. Nobody believes that anymore. My perception says that the ground I'm sitting on is stationary. I know it's spinning at dizzying speeds and hurtling through space thousands of miles an hour. My perception tells me I'm seeing colors, shapes, and they're out there, but they're actually created in my consciousness. There's no color in the world. In fact, everything that we call experience doesn't exist in the world. So it's about time we woke up from the dream. And I'll end by saying, what Wittgenstein said, but he was echoing what the wisdom traditions have said forever. He said, our life is a dream, we are asleep. But once in a while, we wake up enough to know that we are dreaming. So it's about time we wake up and ask other people to join in waking up. That's it.
Thank you, Deepak, for inspiring us to be a meta-humanity by waking up from the dream. And we are wishing you well in your 4th ashram and always